Stephanie Alsley, lead pastor at St. Paul United Methodist Church in Benson. We welcome you to our Good Friday service, a service of tennebrae. It's our custom to hold this service in our sanctuary, including readings from our youth. This year, they will come to you digitally. You'll find youth from all 4 of our worship services tonight. You'll hear music from David Shack, our guest organist, and we will conclude the service as we redress the altar. A symbol of this time of waiting and prayer leads us to Easter. And finally, we will conclude, instead of with a benediction, with the chimes signifying the start of that period of time. Welcome then to our service of tennebrae.
The foot washing. Jesus and his disciples were sharing the evening meal. The devil had already provoked Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew the Father had given everything into his hands and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the table and took off his robes. Picking up a linen towel, he tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a wash basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he was wearing. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You don't understand what I am doing now, but you will understand later." "No," Peter said, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Unless I wash you, you won't have a place with me." Simon Peter said, "Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head." Jesus responded, "Those who have bathed need only to have their feet washed, because they are all completely clean. You disciples are clean, but not every one of you." He knew who would betray him. That's why he said not every one of you is clean. After he washed the disciples' feet, he put on his robes and returned to his place at the table. He said to them, "Do you know what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you speak correctly because I am. If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you too must wash each other's feet. I have given you an example. Just as I have done, you also must do. I assure you, servants aren't greater than their master, nor are those who are sent greater than the one who sent them. Since you know these things, you will be happy if you do them."
The Lord's Supper. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was sacrificed, the disciples said to Jesus, "Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat Passover meal?" He sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the city. A man carrying a water jar will meet you. Follow him. Wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is my guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs already furnished. Prepare for us there." The disciples left, came into the city, found everything just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. While they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them and said, "Take this, it's my body." He took a cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, and they all drank from it. He said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. I assure you that I won't drink wine again until that day when I drink it in a new way in God's kingdom."
The honor and the betrayal. When Jesus was at Bethany visiting the house of Simon, who had a skin disease, a woman came to him with a vase made of alabaster containing very expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' head while he was sitting at dinner. Now when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? This perfume could have been sold for a lot of money and given to the poor." But Jesus knew what they were thinking. He said, "Why do you make trouble for the woman? She's done a good thing for me. You always have the poor with you, but you won't always have me. By pouring this perfume over my body, she's prepared me to be buried. I tell you the truth that wherever in the world this good news is announced, what she's done will also be told in memory of her." Then the chief priests and elders of the people gathered in the courtyard of Caiaphas the high priest. They were plotting to arrest Jesus by cunning tricks and to kill him. But they agreed that it shouldn't happen during the feast so there wouldn't be an uproar among the people. Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I turn Jesus over to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver. From that time on, he was looking for an opportunity to turn him in.
Agony and submission in the garden. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to the disciples, "Stay here while I go and pray over there." When he took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, he began to feel sad and anxious. Then he said to them, "I'm very sad. It's as if I am dying. Stay here and keep alert with me." Then he went a short distance further and fell on his face and prayed, "My Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want." He came back to his disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you stay alert 1 hour with me? Stay alert, pray so that you won't give in to temptation. Then the spirit is anger, but the flesh is weak." A second time he went away and prayed, "My Father, if it's not possible that this cup be taken away unless I drink it, then let it be what you want." Again he came back and found them sleeping. Their eyes were heavy with sleep, but he left them and again went and prayed the same words for the 3rd time. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Will you sleep and rest all night? Look, the time has come for the human one to be betrayed to the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Look, here comes my betrayer."
Jesus' arrest. Suddenly, while Jesus was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came with a mob carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent by the chief priests, legal experts, and elders. His betrayer had given them a sign: "Arrest the man I kiss and take him away under guard." As soon as he got there, Judas said to Jesus, "Rabbi." Then he kissed him. Then they came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him. One of the bystanders drew a sword and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his ear. Jesus responded, "Have you come with swords and clubs to arrest me like an outlaw? Day after day I was with you teaching in the temple, but you didn't arrest me, but the scriptures be fulfilled." And all his disciples left him and ran away. One young man of this disciple was wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They grabbed him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked. They led Jesus away to the high priest, and all their chief priests, elders, and legal experts gathered. Peter followed him from a distance right into the high priest's courtyard. He was sitting with the guards warming himself by the fire. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for testimony against Jesus in order to put him to death, but couldn't find any. Many brought false testimony against him, but they contradicted each other. Some stood to offer false witness against him, saying, "We heard saying, I will destroy this temple constructed by humans, and within 3 days I will build another one not made by humans." But their testimonies didn't agree even on this point. Then the high priest stood up in the middle of the gathering and examined Jesus. "Aren't you going to respond to the testimony these people have brought against you?" But Jesus was silent and didn't answer. Again, the high priest asked, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus said, "I am, and you will see the human one sitting on the right side of the Almighty and coming on the heavenly clouds." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we need any more witness? You heard his insult against God. What do you think?" They all condemned him. He deserves to die.
Some began to spit on him. Some covered his face and hit him, saying, "Prophet." Then the guards took him and beat him. Meanwhile, Peter was below in the courtyard. A woman, one of the high priest's servants, approached and saw Peter warming himself by the fire. She stared at him and said, "You are also with the Nazarene Jesus." But he denied it, saying, "I don't know what you are talking about. I don't understand what you are saying." And he went outside into the outer courtyard. A luster crowned the female servant saw him and began a second time, saying to those standing around, "This man is one of them." But he denied it again. A short time later, those standing around again said to Peter, "You must be one of them, because you are also a Galilean." But he cursed and swore, "I don't know this man you are talking about." At that very moment, a luster crowned the second time. Peter remembered that Jesus told him, "Before a rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down, sobbing. At daybreak, the chief priest with the elders, legal experts, and the whole Sanhedrin formed the plan. They bound Jesus, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, That's what you say." The chief priests were accusing him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Ain't you going to answer? What about all these accusations?" But Jesus gave no more answers, so that Pilate marveled. During the festival, Pilate released one prisoner to them, whomever they requested. A man named Barabbas was locked up with the rebels who had committed murder during an uprising. The crowd pushed forward and asked Pilate to release someone. As he regularly did, Pilate asked them, "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" He knew that the chief priest had handed him over because of jealousy, but the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release Barabbas to them instead. Pilate replied, "Then what do you want me to do with the one you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What wrong has he done?" They shouted even louder, "Crucify him." Pilate wanted to satisfy the crowd, so he released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus whipped, then handed him over to be crucified.
The crucifixion. The soldiers led Jesus away into the courtyard. of the palace known as the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole company of soldiers. They dressed him up in a purple robe and twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on him. They saluted him. "Hey, King of the Jews." Again and again they struck his head with a stick. They spit on him and knelt before him to honor him. When they finished mocking him, they stripped him of the purple robe and put his own clothes back on him, and then led him out to crucify him. Simon, a man from Cyrene, Alexander, and Rufus' father, was coming in from the countryside. They forced him to carry his cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means skull place. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he didn't take it. They crucified him. They divided up his clothes, drawing lots for them to determine who would take what. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The notice of the formal charge against him was written, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 outlaws with him, one on his right and one on his left. People walking by insulted him, shaking their heads, saying, "You're going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, were you? Save yourself and come down from that cross." In the same way, the chief priests were making fun of him among themselves. Together with the legal experts, he saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. Let the Christ, the King of Israel, come down from the cross, then we will see and believe. Even those who had been crucified with Jesus insulted him.
Jesus' death. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, the whole earth was dark. At 3, Jesus cried out with a loud shout, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you left me?" After hearing him, some standing there said, "Look, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, and put it on a pole. He offered to Jesus to drink, saying, "Let's see if Elijah will come to take him down." But Jesus let out a loud cry and died. The curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. When the centurion who stood facing Jesus saw how he died, he said, "This man was certainly God's son." Since it was late in the afternoon on preparation day, just before the Sabbath, Joseph from Arimathea dared to approach Pilate and ask for Jesus' body. Joseph was a permanent council member who also eagerly anticipated the coming of God's kingdom. Pilate wondered if Jesus was already dead. He called the centurion and asked him whether Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that Jesus was dead, Pilate gave the dead body to Joseph. He bought a linen cloth, took Jesus down from the cross, wrapped him in the cloth, and laid him in a tomb that had been carved out of rock. He rolled a stone against the entrance to the tomb